So my dad came over and filmed the Q&A last night. That was a day earlier than I expected, meaning the video is done now and you guys can have it today. Do just want to say, I always like to say it before these videos that, it's my dad. He's not used to filming. He's not used to talking into a microphone or a camera. There is going to be certain parts in the video where the audio dips back and forth and whatnot, but I think for the most part, he did an excellent job and I really hope you guys enjoy this video. 2 insanely fast plugs. 1, head over to gfuel.com and use my code, or prizepicks.com and use my code if you're 18 years or older. Gonna save you a discount on any G Fuel products or match up to $100 of your first deposit on Prize Picks. Just remember, guys, always play responsibly, and let's get into my dad's Q&A.
Hello everybody. Wyatt asked me if I would answer some more of your questions, and I was more than willing to come and do it. So I looked at all the questions that everybody put in, a lot of good questions, and I divided them into 3 groups. Questions about Wyatt specifically, questions about sports in general, and then some questions about me, which are going to be boring, but I'll answer as many of the questions as I can get in this time segment. Let's start off with questions about Wyatt specifically. Did he have a nickname growing up? Well, he did. I always called him Wiser, and I still call him Wiser occasionally. On my phone, it's kind of funny. He was always coming up with stuff, just plans, all these secret plans. So I called him Little Schemer, and I have it on my phone now. So when he calls, it comes up as Little Schemer. But he had a nickname that he got, and he came home from daycare and told his mom and he was in tears about this nickname. The nickname was Little Cusser. And since you listened to him, you know why the other little kids, and he was probably 5, 6 years old, gave him the nickname a Little Cusser. Apparently, he was doing a little cursing at the daycare. Was Wyatt a bedwetter? I thought this was a good question because, in fact, he was a bedwetter. And as far as I know, he's still a bedwetter. But yeah, he was a bedwetter. I don't know what that indicates, but was Wyatt a good child or a bad child? He had his moments, but he actually was a good kid. He was pretty easy to raise. He was a cute little fart. Mom and I wouldn't call him a big problem. When he got into his teens, then he was more of a problem. Wyatt good in school. Did he get good grades? No and no. Am I proud of Wyatt? Well, how could I not be proud of Wyatt? He's successful. He's a really good kid. He's a nice young man. I know as far as all of you listeners, he takes it very seriously, puts a lot of time into this, and really cares about putting out something that you want to hear. So I'm very proud of him. How often would I hear Wyatt rage when he was growing up? Well, pretty often. Usually in the middle of the night, he's playing his video games, and I talked about this once before, but it'd get extremely loud, and I would have to get up at 2 in the morning and go down to his room and get a little bit tough with him and tell him, you're either going to shut that thing off or I'm going to take it out of the room. So what was my reaction when I found out Wyatt was doing social media full time? I really didn't know what it was. I told him it'd be better off if he got a real job, but he's been very successful in it and it fits him. So I'm happy about it. Wyatt go through any phases? The only phase he really goes through, he does weird things with his hair. And then he believes that he can grow a beard or a mustache, and he doesn't have enough on there to grow anything. But he tries to come up with these concoctions. So that's a phase he's going through. How do I feel about Wyatt getting his own house? Really happy for him. Beautiful home. His dog, I think he did for him more for Buxton than he did for himself. But I'm very happy for him. My wife and I both are. If the name Wyatt wasn't an option, what would we have named him? Well, I was the one that was able to pick the boy's name, and my wife picked the girl's name. If it was a girl, he would have been Hannah. And if my wife had a choice as a boy, he would have been Charlie. I picked the name Wyatt from the Western Wyatt Earp, and it's kind of a unique name at the time. There's more Wyatts around now, but it turns out it fits him because he's a gunslinger if there ever was one. Best memory of something that Wyatt did as a child. What was the stupidest, weirdest thing that he did? I'm combining these into 2. I think I told this story, but I'll quickly retell it again. We told Wyatt not to fight. It was not allowed, no fighting. He had an argument with a kid in the other end of the neighborhood, and rather than fight, he dropped his pants and took a crap in their yard. And his mother found out about it, and she gave him a plastic bag, a couple of them actually, made him go down and pick it up and bring it back. That was probably the stupidest thing he ever did. Have you sat down and watched Wyatt's videos? Yeah, I do. I have. I don't watch them all. I don't get into a lot of the gaming stuff. I loved it when he did his impressions of the different coaches like Zimmer or Bill Belichick impression, or the guy with the goofy eyes that used to coach the Dolphins. I thought they were hilarious, and I really enjoyed those the best. What was the most embarrassing thing the school called me about? Probably They called me to tell Wyatt was using his cell phone at school and wasn't allowed, and I told them no, it wasn't, because we took it away. They said, well, he has a cell phone. I went down there, and to my embarrassment, he had a cell phone. He had taken the old cell phone that he had, taken the SIM card out of his current phone, snuck it into that, and was taking that to school. I mean, that's how devious he is. What was Wyatt's favorite food as a kid? I think it was Peeps. Those marshmallowy candies, you can buy them for different seasons. I used to buy them for him all the time, but now he doesn't like them anymore. He probably overdosed on Peeps. What was Wyatt's favorite type of music? I think it's classic rock, although he has a Frank Sinatra album up there. How fat was Wyatt when he was born? So how much did he weigh? He was 8 pounds. His brother was 10'6", so not as big as his brother, but he was a big one. Has Wyatt ever brought a girlfriend home? 2 different ones. The one previous and the one he has now. Both nice young ladies, so he brought a couple of girls home. Favorite thing to do with Wyatt when he was growing up? Probably taking him and his brother bowling on Saturday mornings. I got him started in bowling in the bowl league from about 5-6 years old until they graduated high school, and I really liked doing that. The other thing I did with them was I took him up to my folks north of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. They have a place on a lake. We'd take him up there during the summer for a week fishing, pick up his cousin, and I really enjoyed doing that with Wyatt too. Now, sports-related questions. And by the way, some of you are trolling me on Packers and their quarterback, and I'm going to answer a few of those, but I know you're trolling me. What is your favorite and least favorite NFL team? Well, my favorite, obviously, is the Vikings because I live here in Minnesota. Your least favorite, well, I think you all know because you've been watching, it's the Green Bay Packers. An honorable mention to the Cowgirls from Dallas and the Seattle Seahawks. I don't care for any of those teams, but Green Bay will always be my least favorite team. What is the best game, best Viking games you've ever seen? Really a toss-up between 3. 2 games where Brett Favre was a Viking and shellacked the Packers. I really enjoyed it at Lambeau. That was a good one because he went in there and made the fans choke on it. It was fabulous. But the 1998 game where we went into Dallas and Randy Moss caught 3 passes for 154 yards and 3 touchdowns. We took it to Dallas and Jerry and his boys. That's probably my all-time favorite, but those other 2 were good. What was your favorite sport movie of all time? Hoosiers, which was a basketball kind of story. Gene Hackman was in it. Very good movie if you haven't seen it. And my favorite, though, is probably Brian's Song. It was about Gail Sayers and Brian Piccolo, who ended up dying of cancer in the movie. It's kind of a tearjerker almost, but it's really a well-done, I think, movie. Favorite Twins player? Jim Cott. You don't know him. He was a pitcher with the Twins. Very likable guy. He's like in his 80s. He was just inducted in the Hall of Fame. What do I think of Eric Kendricks being released? Well, I'm sorry. I mean, he was a great player and a great linebacker for the Vikings for a lot of years, but I guess he's lost a step and they got to deal with this salary cap stuff, but kind of sad. That's how I feel about it. The most heartbreaking sports moment. Well, Gary Anderson's wide left field goal is probably the most heartbreaking, besides losing 3 Super Bowls, that I watched. Fairly heartbreaking. Why do I love the Vikings, and is there another team that I like? Well, I love the Vikings because I've grown up with them here in Minnesota. Probably my second favorite team is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I also like the Buffalo Bills. Would I rather not have electricity for the rest of my life or be a Packers fan? Hell, who needs electricity? What was my reaction to the Packers' downfall last season? You know what it was. I loved it. What is my favorite Green Bay Packers player? This is a good one. Tony Mandrich, because he was so bad. Did I watch a lot of hockey growing up? No. A little bit of the North Stars, but I'm not really a hockey fan. Favorite wide receiver for each decade? Well, I can't remember the 60s, but the 70s it would be Harold Carmichael, who was with Philadelphia. He was about 8 feet tall, and Fred Biletnikoff, who looked like he should be riding a Harley Davidson rather than playing football, but he was with the Raiders. In the 80s, I'll say Jerry Rice. In the 90s, Chris Carter. The 2000 series, I suppose it's Randy Moss. And 2010 beyond that decade, probably Larry Fitzgerald, because he's from Minnesota and he's a legend in himself. Least favorite player and favorite player of all time? Well, John Randall, who was with the Vikings, would probably be my favorite player. The guy was an absolute beast. My least favorite player, well, we don't have to go into that. It's the prima donna from Green Bay. Favorite player as a kid would be either Larry Zonka, who was a running back with Miami. He was fun to watch. Or Ken Stabler, the Snake, who's a quarterback with the Oakland Raiders. Any thoughts on Minnesota Twins this year? The Twins, except for their hitting and their fielding and their pitching, they're going to be good. Do I watch March Madness or not? Not too much, but I'm kind of a Big Ten fan, so my bet would be Purdue to win it all. What is my opinion on the NBA? I don't have much of an opinion on the NBA. I think the NBA is a joke. I'm sorry. When I was a kid watching it, traveling got called if you took a step. Now you can run 20 steps as long as you're in process to shooting. So for me, watching the NBA is watching paint dry. My favorite athlete of all time, George Foreman, the boxer, heavyweight boxer. If you've never seen George Foreman before, go and watch George Foreman versus Jerry Cooney. It's only 2 rounds, but you'll see the power and the punches of George Foreman. I love George Foreman. Plus, he had that fancy grill he came out with. If you could play with one team in the past, which would it be and in what position? Be a pitcher for the Twins. I always thought that would be the ultimate. Of course, got to be able to pitch, and that isn't me. My favorite NFL player of all time, Barry Sanders. We've talked about that before. Top 5 NBA players all time. I'm going to take Abdul-Jabbar. I'm going to take Magic Johnson. I'll take Dr. J. Take Moses Malone. And I'll take Michael Jordan. How do you think Fran Tarkenton would do in the league today? I think he'd do great because it's a passing league. And Tarkenton back then already had the mentality of throwing first, running second. And he was a scrambler, so I think he'd do great. What made me start liking football? My grandmother watched football, and I started watching it with her, and that's how I got into it. Who will the Vikings pick in the first round? I hope they pick Jake Moody, the kicker from Michigan. I'd like to, for once, have a decent kicker. Favorite GOAT athlete, Deion Sanders, because he could do it all. Extreme random player that I like, Phil Niekro or Tim Wakefield. I even went as far as having a Tim Wakefield jersey. I think Wyatt has it now. But I like the knuckleballers. I think that pitch is a lot of fun. And that's why I'm kind of into pitching. If I could sit down and say one thing to Aaron Rodgers, what would it be? This is trolling me again. I would tell him, why don't you go back under the rock you just crawled out from underneath? Favorite year for the Vikings, 1998. Favorite wrestler of all time, talked about this before, it would be Abdullah the Butcher, or I like Baron von Raschke and the Claw too. What would you rather do, spend a week with Aaron Rodgers or never watch the Vikings again? I have no problem with just watching the Twins. Have I been to US Bank and seen a game? Yes, I was to US Bank. I enjoyed the seating is great, phenomenal, but we were kind of in the nosebleed seats, and to get to the bathroom or get something to eat was murder. So best and worst NFL uniform. I like the Buccaneers uniform and I like the Raiders uniform. Worst? Well, Chicago and Green Bay get an honorable mention because they got a letter on there. Ooh, they really went out when they came up with that logo. But I'm sorry, the worst is Cleveland because they don't have nothing on their helmet, for Christ's sakes. Now we're going to go into about myself. These are going to be kind of boring, but I'm just going to answer them straight up. Did I play sports growing up? No. Well, I bowled and I golfed. What is the best fast food place to eat? I don't really, we eat out very little. Best moment in my life, I suppose the birth of Wyatt and Joe. What is my all-time favorite album? I like Neil Young, and I also like Willie Nelson has an album called Stardust. How did I meet Wyatt's mom? It was a blind date in a town called Bemidji, Minnesota. What is one location that I'd like to visit? Talk about boring. It'd be Mount Rushmore because I haven't been there before. Have I ever played video games, and if so, what was my favorite? I talked about this before too. I think I had a Nintendo 64 that I bought. I really bought it for the boys, but I bought Turok Dinosaur Hunter, and I actually was pretty good at that. And one of the boys, probably Joe, ruined it by giving me a cheat code. And then Crash Bandicoot. What is my favorite appetizer? Deep fried mushrooms or chicken gizzards? Probably make most of you vomit, but they're actually really good. My favorite son, I can't pick because I love them both. What was your favorite childhood memory? Can be anything. Well, it's probably growing up on the lake north of Detroit Lakes and playing golf with my parents. So favorite movie? Grumpy Old Men. Favorite TV show as a kid? Well, Star Trek or Batman. If the Vikings win the Super Bowl, what would be the first thing you'd do? I'd get a tattoo. I said that I'll get the Viking tattooed on my arm. Do I have Riz? You have to remember, I'm in my 60s, so Riz, if I get the gist of it, it means what's my in? So my Riz has always been the ability to take humor and make people laugh. What was my favorite cartoon to watch when I was young? Well, I love Space Ghost, the Herculoids, and probably Johnny Quest. My favorite was Bugs Bunny. It's still the best cartoon. Best cereal. It has to be Captain Crunch. I mean, that's still pretty damn good. Favorite color is green because it reminds me of being outside spring. Favorite candy growing up, Ice Cube chocolate squares. Those are excellent. The other thing I liked is Circus Peanuts, if you could get them when they're fresh. Now, to the end of the questions, but one thing was asked over and over again, and I'll retell this thing, but I was asked a bunch of times again about when I got the news from Wyatt that he had thrown the controller into the TV. And I was up ice fishing. I got the call, He said, Dad, I have some bad news for you. The controller slipped or bounced or whatever, and it hit the middle of your TV and it's broken. Now, take in mind, this is a 55-inch TV at the time, which was, I have 75 now, but it's 55. First time I've ever had one like this. Beautiful TV. Didn't have it that long, and he calls me telling me that. And I told him I wasn't real happy with it, but we'll wait until I got home, basically. And I got home, and I looked at it, and I knew damn well that he threw that controller. He has a bad temper, and he threw that controller right at the TV. So then I talked to him about it, and he comes up with this cockamamie story that somehow the controller, he threw it, it hit the ground and bounced up and hit the TV. There is no way in hell you could throw that controller, because its controller's got multiple sides on it, right? It's going to hit the carpet and bounce magically into the center of the TV. To this day, as I said before, I'll never believe that story. He threw that, he got pissed, and he threw that damn thing right in the middle of the TV and broke it. I was not happy about it. I let him know it. I can't remember, but I think I made him pay for it. It's been too long now. When you get old like me, you can't remember things anymore. So that ends the questions you guys sent in. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun to do these things. And probably not the most exciting video because there's a lot of pretty boring information in there. I'm still glad to do it. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and if Wyatt has me back, I'll see you next time.
And there you have it for my dad's Q&A number 3, maybe 3 or 4. He's had quite a few of them over the years. Thank you again, Dad. I know you enjoyed making this video as well. I know the people enjoy seeing you. He said he wants to make a division standing prediction for next year, so you guys are gonna see him again. Don't worry about that. But now I'm gonna end this video, guys. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and as always, I will see you in the next video.